Our next presenter is a neuropsychologist and former art history major. He is the Senior Scientific Director at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, after serving as a professor at the University of Missouri at Columbia for 27 years. He's currently a member of the Creative Forces 5-year Research Planning Committee and is developing research to validate the use of the creative arts therapies with service members and veterans with TBI. Obviously, being an art history major didn't hold him back, and you gotta love his name. Please welcome Dr. Brick Johnstone.
Do you have the
Liquor.
Good morning. I am very pleased to be here. The first thing I wanted to say is that I am an art history major, and I've been every conference I've ever gone to, I've never been able to say that. And then I was worried that if I said that, people were going to say, oh, the art history support group is down the hall. But no, it's love being here today. And let me tell you my goal for the day. When I talked to people about coming, it was my hope that I could push everybody a little bit to tell you what we all need to do to advocate for all the different art therapies and make them a common practice in healthcare everywhere. And I think many of you will be very happy with me when I say I just absolutely love the art therapies, and I think they are so important. And some of you are not going to be so happy with me when I say, but you can't just do case studies where people describe how much they appreciate the art therapies. You really need to work with scientists using empirical data to show outcomes. And it's interesting and it's hard to merge the sciences and the arts, but I think it's very possible. And I'm going to show you an example of what we are doing at Fort Belvoir to make that happen, to give you some ideas of things maybe everybody can do with local faculty members, researchers, or maybe with us at Fort Belvoir. My disclaimer, these are just my views. Go there in a minute, but being at the university for 27 years and working in healthcare and rehabilitation, primarily people with brain injuries, it got to the point where I didn't think that we were doing healthcare. We were doing healthcare business. So people would come in with brain injuries, and what they would do is they would get X number of therapy hours. 8 hours of speech, 8 hours of occupational therapy, 8 hours of physical therapy. When the insurance ran out after 10 days, you were gone. It's like, that's not health. That's not health. That's a business. People weren't really humans. They were numbers and they were disorders. So you were a brain injury and you were a stroke and you were a spinal cord injury. And people, they really weren't seen as humans. But you put them in an artistic setting, performing art, and you kind of look at the human nature of them. And it's been interesting seeing these slides. What has struck me for the first time is in the military, there's a lot of destruction. Trying to deal with that destruction can be very difficult. And one of the ways to deal with that is through creativity, creation. And what a better way to create than through the arts. So the challenge, however, is everybody loves the art therapies. And they basically say, yeah, I love it, it's great. But people who kind of pay for these services and promote these services, they want more than just those case studies. However, it's really hard to use scientific methods to validate the art therapies. And what we need to do is start using more traditional scientific measures, objective measures, data, statistical analyses to show how they work. And a lot of people in the arts that I've talked to, they're not real comfortable with that. It's like, how can you quantify art? How can you quantify benefits of art? And to an extent, I agree, but then I also think that you can. And there's different ways that we can do it together. What we have to do is use the precise methodologies of the sciences and the collective wisdoms of the humanities. I love these two pictures real quickly. On the left, this is some new type of brain imaging that shows connections within the brain and how colorful it is to show the different paths within the brain. And on the right, we have somebody that's been engaged in a little finger painting. And like here we have the sciences, and here we have the arts, and it's pretty much the same. And I don't know if you guys know this, but there's studies out there that show that people are much more likely to believe a scientific article if there's pictures of neuroimages in there and they have color in them. Honestly. So it's kind of like the arts really influence people and what they believe in. All right, here's an example of what we are doing at Fort Belvoir. As people have alluded to, there's a lot more soldiers coming home from combat experiences with brain injuries. And a primary reason related to that is there are now blast injuries. So everybody knows a traumatic brain injury. You fall, you hit your head, and you have an injury. With blast wave injuries from like IED explosions, what happens is the blast wave passes through your brain, and your brain just wiggles. And it's all that wiggling that kind of throws it off. So a lot of these soldiers are having brain injury impairments that are not consistent with like a traumatic brain injury. And what they're finding is a lot of these soldiers, most people, if you have a mild brain injury, you're back to normal by 6 months. But for these military personnel, they're having these symptoms persist a long time. Some of it is because it's a new type of injury, and some of it is because of the psychological difficulties they faced or the moral injuries. It's really nice to hear people talking more about moral injuries because it's something that we need to do a better job of addressing. So we have identified soldiers with brain injury at our clinic that have cognitive impairments. So if you have a brain injury, the symptoms that you're going to have, we say they're A, B, and C. A is affect, how you feel. B is behavior, how you act. And C is cognition, how you think. We need to find different ways to improve their neuropsychological abilities. The military just completed a big cognitive rehabilitation study across many of those sites that you saw up there, where they use speech therapy and occupational therapy to give memory training, attention training, language training to show that it does help. But not a whole lot, a little bit. So what we said is we need to do some studies where we look at cognitive rehabilitation, the standard one, in addition to music therapy. And part of it, you've seen these collaborations between all these scientific groups and these artistic groups. One that's not been mentioned is the NIH. Francis Collins, who is the head of NIH, is working with Renee, and I can't remember her last name. Fleming, thank you very much. I knew somebody would have that. And they're working together to show how music can affect and improve functioning. And there's a lot of research out there on Alzheimer's disease now. You've probably seen it on 60 Minutes. These people, they can't remember their names, they can't remember their kids' names, they can't remember basic things, but they can remember to play the piano, they can remember to dance. And that shows that music engages different parts of the brain than like standard things like memory and attention. So we said, let's do a study where we do the standard cognitive rehab, music therapy, engage different parts of the brain, because it's our belief that the music therapy is going to actually help these people, their cognition, more so than just the traditional. So how does music therapy improve cognition? Speech engages memory, attention, language, pretty basic cognitive task. However, music therapy engages different neuropsychological abilities, including temporal processes like rhythm, pulse, meter, tempo, tonal constructs, form and timbre, and then different neural networks. So it makes sense to put them in speech pathology to work some neural networks, music therapy to work other neural networks, and that will give you the idea that maybe together that'll help people process information better and function better. So what we need to do is look at different combinations of speech therapy and music therapy. And something that we're doing at Belvoir, we don't want to like compare speech with just music. What we want to do is look at that music as a complementary therapy. So basically music as boosting speech. This describes the study very simply. We developed some speech pathologists and a music therapist developed this program where they combine music and speech therapy. Stacy Thomas, Cynthia Zamorchak, Hannah Bronson, and Mega Wong. I want to give them credit. But basically, what we want to do, we've set up a study to look at 210 service members with brain injuries over 2 years. A third of them are going to get just speech therapy. A third are going to get speech therapy plus music therapy. And a third are going to get something where the speech and music therapists are providing services together. It's called auditory CrossFit. We are going to give them many different outcome measures where we just sit down and say, what did you like about it? What did you not like about it? How did it help you? We're going to look at how it improves memory, attention, auditory processing. We're going to see if it improves depression and anxiety, if it improves health and functioning, including, I hate to say it, but it's important, healthcare cost. Providing music therapy, does it reduce the number of services that these service members need, and it reduce the number and the cost that they receive? We have a behavioral psychoacoustician. I can't pronounce that. He's a guy, he describes it as a Where's Waldo auditory test. So everybody knows Where's Waldo. You have all this visual information, and you got to find Waldo. Well, he puts these headphones on people, and he'll say, listen for the guy that says blue code 8. And then you hear like 6 different voices. One will say blue code 8. Somebody says red code 1. And you have all these different voices going on, and you have to listen for one. So it's like a selective attention for audition. Then we have a group out of Northwestern, Dr. Nina Kraus, who's done all this research looking at electrophysiological measures of auditory processing, and particularly as it relates to music. So the music processes information in different parts of the brain, and we're going to hook these people up with all this different electrophysiological measures to see how that is improved following music therapy. What's really neat about this grant are all the different collaborators. I cannot tell you how neat Creative Forces Networks is. When I came and found out that the NEA is working with the Department of Defense, it's like, this is truly, truly innovative, that both of them would want to work together. So we have their backing. We have 5 different military treatment facilities, 1 in Virginia, 1 in DC, 1 in Texas, 1 in California, and 1 in Alaska. Then we also have 4 different academic universities that we're going to work with. We want military perspective, we want academic perspective. So we have Temple, Drexel, James Madison, and Northwestern. What do we want to do in the future? Similar types of research. You saw the mask paintings, and Melissa Walker is up at the NICO in DC, and we'd like to work with her. She just had a paper published that showed when people paint these masks, there's 4 basic psychological themes that come out. And a lot of these young service members, they have difficulties expressing what's going on inside. Either they don't know how, or the government is saying, suck it up, soldier. So we're trying to see if having them engage in this art therapy can help the behavioral psychologists and social workers improve or tailor their behavioral counseling. We also want to do the same thing for music therapy and psychological health. And as one of the slides before, it's a perfect example. So if you have all this emotional angst build up and you're looking for an outlet, you can sit in your psychologist's office and talk about it. Might help some. Or you can get yourself a guitar like that one person said in the video and basically just go to town. So those are two studies we're looking at. Last slide here. Possibilities. We didn't get this at the University of Missouri, but we're doing this in the military at Fort Belvoir, which is really exciting. We have acupuncture going on, we have yoga, we have nutrition and fitness, we have art therapy, dance therapy, music therapy, a lot of really creative things going on that we want to see what works. And we're telling our folks we'll see what works and what doesn't work, and people need to be comfortable with that. Take-home message. Everybody needs to understand that the art therapies and the humanities can drive healthcare. And I think if you get in a healthcare situation, it's like, no, you guys are complementary, you're not going to drive anything, we'll let you know. I argue that you absolutely can. And it's meetings like this and therapists out there that you're doing good things, you'll let them know. There needs to be integration between the sciences and the humanities if we want to see what works and what doesn't. We need both subjective analysis and objective analysis, and we need collaborations. So if you know people out there from universities you can work with, you know other speech therapists from other settings, make those connections. And I'll come back in a year and see what you guys are doing. So that's it. Thank you very much.